We have reached the fourth round of elimination bracket play. The winner of this match will advance in the elimination bracket. This contest features Parklane Academy and Mississippi Pinebelt. Let's meet the teams.
Josh Hartz, freshman. Leanne Bradford, senior.
Walker Willis, senior.
Duncan Knight, sophomore.
Walker Pierce, sophomore.
Joseph Burkell, freshman.
Anna Rachel Krebs, junior.
Jaden Hibbets, sophomore.
So we'll begin round one with a 5-point toss-up question. Name the Mexican hot sauce made with chilies and tomatoes.
Mississippi Pinebelt, Anna Rachel.
Sriracha.
No. Parklane, Leanne.
Tabasco.
No.
The answer is salsa. For 10 points, who was the U.S. president when both the current Department of Energy and Department of Education were created?
Mississippi Pinebelt, Walker.
Franken.
No. Parklane, Walker.
Ulysses S. Grant.
No.
It was Jimmy Carter. For 10 points, in the U.S., the food maize is usually called what?
Mississippi Pinebelt, Walker.
Corn.
Yes.
For 20 points, his initials were BFS. Who was the American behaviorist who developed a box to train pigeons?
Mississippi Pinebelt, Walker.
Schrodinger.
No. Parklane, Josh.
Stevens.
No.
It was B.F. Skinner. Another toss-up for 20 points. Which piece did Russian composer Peter Ilyich Tchaikovsky write to celebrate both the consecration of the Cathedral of Christ the Redeemer and the 70th anniversary of the Battle of Borodino, fought between Russian and French forces on September 7, 1812?
Mississippi Pinebelt, Chilton.
1812 Overture.
Yes.
For 10 points, it's a math question. The sine of 2x exceeds the sine of x by what value when x is 3 pi half radians?
3 pi divided
3
by
pi over 2 radians. No answer?
Pinelane, Walker.
No, it's Parklane.
Parklane, I'm sorry.
10 degrees.
No. Mississippi Pinebelt, Walker.
10 radians.
No.
The answer was 1. For 5 points, India's traditional system separates people by...
Parklane, Walker.
Cast.
Yes.
It's a math question for 5 points. A quadratic function is described by an equation of the form y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. What value can a not assume in this formula?
Mississippi Pinebelt, Anna Rachel.
0.
Yes.
All right, you'll need a pencil for this 10-point toss-up. How will the force of gravitation between two bodies change if the distance between the bodies is quadrupled?
Mississippi Pinebelt, Walker.
64 times.
No. Parklane, Leanne.
Times 16 or 16 times.
No.
It was 1/16th as much. For 10 points, when Julius Caesar marched with his 5,000 troops against Pompeii in 49 BC.
Parklane, Walker.
Crossing the Rubicon.
Yes.
For 10 points, name 2 of the next 4 emperors who succeeded Caesar Augustus.
Mississippi Pinebelt, Walker.
Nero and Hadrian.
No. Parklane, Walker.
Hadrian and Augustus.
Repeat, please.
Hadrian and Augustus.
No.
Okay, it was either Tiberius, Caligula, Claudius, or Nero. We have another toss-up for 20 points. Name the author who wrote the following passage: an empty stream, a great silence, an impenetrable forest. The air was thick, warm, heavy, sluggish. Cited from his novel, The Heart of Darkness.
Mississippi Pinebelt, Walker.
Sinclair.
No. Parklane, Walker.
Hemingway.
No.
It was Joseph Conrad. Another toss-up for 10 points. Name the author of Jazz, a 1992 novel set in the 1920s on Lenox Avenue in Harlem. This author won the 1988 Pulitzer Prize for Beloved.
Parklane, Walker.
Augusta.
No. Mississippi Pinebelt, Anna Rachel.
Clemens?
No.
Was Toni Morrison for 5 points. And that's the end of round 1. We'll be back in a moment with a preliminary score. And we're back after our first round of play. The score is Parklane Academy 15, Mississippi Pinebelt 35. And now we move into round 2. For a toss-up for 5 points, which patriotic song replaced Take Me Out to the Ball Game in the 7th inning stretch when Major League Baseball resumed play the Monday after September 11, 2001?
Mississippi Pinebelt, Walker.
Battle Hymn of the Republic.
No. Parklane, Walker.
Yankee Doodle.
No.
It was God Bless America. A toss-up for 10 points. Who was the friendly specter?
Mississippi Pinebelt, Anna Rachel.
Casper?
Yes.
And here are your bonus questions. Identify each of the following concerning refusals. For 5 points, the international organization that came into existence in Geneva on January 10, 1920, even though the U.S. Senate refused to endorse membership in it.
League of Nations.
Yes.
For 10 points, 26th U.S. president who refused to shoot a black bear cub on a hunting trip in the Mississippi Delta.
Teddy Roosevelt.
Yes.
For 15 points, U.S. general who was fired in 1951 when he refused to obey President Truman.
MacArthur.
Yes.
And for 20 points, identify the 2 world leaders whose correspondence concerning the Cuban Missile Crisis was made public by the U.S. State Department in the 1990s after many years of refusing to unseal it.
Kennedy and who was the USSR?
No, USSR.
Kennedy and Castro?
No, that's Cuba was Castro.
Okay, so Kennedy and...
Was it Gorbachev?
No, it wasn't Gorbachev, just say Castro.
Kennedy and Castro.
No.
Kennedy and Khrushchev.
Yes.
All right. And we're back to a toss-up question for 10 points. It is a math question. An isosceles triangle is inscribed in a square of perimeter 24 inches by connecting the midpoint of one side of the square to the square's vertices on the opposite side. Find the area of the isosceles triangle.
Parklane, Walker.
49 square inches.
Up here, please.
Oh, 49.
No. Mississippi Pinebelt, Walker.
18 inches. Square.
No.
18 inches square.
No.
The answer is 18 square inches. For 10 points, for which U.S. president is the memorial that includes Gateway Arch named? He purchased the Louisiana Territory.
Mississippi Pinebelt, Anna Rachel.
Thomas Jefferson?
Yes.
And here are your bonus questions. Identify each of the following concerning marine biology. For 5 points, common name for any of the odd-shaped fish that make up the genus Hippocampus.
Seahorse. Seahorse is seahorse.
Seahorse.
Yes.
For 10 points, very small floating plants and animals named for the Greek for drifting.
Plankton.
Yes.
For 15 points, large brown seaweed that can form underwater forests.
Kelp.
Yes.
And for 20 points, small shrimp-like animals that are the main food of blue whales.
Krill.
Yes.
All right, and we are back to a toss-up for 10 points. What shape is the graph of a quadratic function?
Mississippi Pinebelt, Anna Rachel.
Parabola?
Yes.
And here are your bonus questions. Identify the U.S. city noted for each of the following. For 5 points, Copley Square near the Back Bay.
What? San Francisco.
San Francisco.
No.
Parklane.
That's what I was, Boston. Boston?
Yes.
All right, and we are back to a toss-up for 10 points. A heat-resisting glass will result if the limestone normally used in glass production is replaced by oxides of which two elements whose chemical symbols are Al and B.
Mississippi Pine Belt, Joseph.
Aluminum and boron.
Yes.
And here are your bonus questions. The last Pontiac badged cars were built in December 2009 with one final vehicle in January 2010. Franchise agreements for Pontiac dealers expired on October 31, 2010, leaving GM to focus on its 4 remaining North American brands. One at a time, name these 4 remaining GM brands for 5 points.
Chevrolet.
Yes.
For 10 points.
General Motors.
Yes.
For 15 points.
Cadillac.
Yes.
And for 20 points.
Dodge.
No.
Parklane.
Ford?
No.
It was Buick. All right, and that's the end of round 2. We'll be back in a moment with a preliminary score. And after round 2, the score is Parklane Academy 40, Mississippi Pinebelt 185. Let's start with round 3. It's a toss-up for 5 points. Identify the megalithic observatory whose stones are so arranged.
Parklane, Walker.
Stonehenge.
Yes.
And here are your bonus questions. Identify each of the following concerning Shakespeare. For 5 points, in what century was Shakespeare born?
17th.
He was born in the 1500s.
16th?
Yes.
For 10 points, in which Shakespearean play do the characters Shylock and Antonio appear?
It's not Romeo and Juliet.
The Taming of the Shrew?
No.
Merchant of Venice.
Yes.
Okay, and we are back to a toss-up for 10 points. Identify the largest island in the world.
Mississippi Pine Belt, Walker.
Greenland.
Yes.
And here are your bonus questions. Identify each of the following by giving an answer including the letters T-H-O-R. For 5 points, what name beginning with T is given to the 12 vertebrae located between the cervical vertebrae and lumbar vertebrae in the human body?
Thorax.
No.
Parklane.
Thoracic?
Yes.
Yes. All right, and we are back to a toss-up for 15 points. From which Atlanta school, a private historically black men's liberal arts college, did filmmaker Spike Lee, former U.S. Surgeon General Dr. David Satcher, and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. all graduate?
Mississippi Pine Belt, Joseph.
Washington and Lee.
No. Parklane, Josh.
University of Atlanta.
No.
It was Morehouse College. Another toss-up for 5 points. Michael Jordan of the Chicago Bulls retired in 1999 from the NBA. Name the number he wore.
Parklane, Josh.
23.
Yes.
And here are your bonus questions. Identify each of the following concerning art in the 1990s. For 5 points, European master of The Last Supper, who was featured at a National Gallery of Art exhibit.
Oh, whoever drew it. That's him.
Michelangelo?
No. Yes.
And we're back to a toss-up. For 10 points, identify the state whose capital on the Winooski River is named after a French city as a tribute for French support in the American War of Independence.
Mississippi Pine Belt, Walker.
Des Moines.
No. Parklane, Leanne.
Pierre.
No.
The answer was Vermont. For 10 points, in what year was the Berlin Wall built?
Mississippi Pinebelt, Joseph.
1950.
No. Parklane, Josh.
1954.
No.
It's 1961. Another toss-up for 10 points. In what year did the Berlin Wall start coming down?
Mississippi Pinebelt, Walker.
1990.
No. Parklane, Duncan.
1989.
Yes.
And here are your bonus questions. Answer each of the following chemistry questions. For 5 points, if iodine 131 has a half-life of 8 days, how long will it take 400 grams to decay to 50 grams?
It's 4 times 8. 32 days.
No.
24 days.
Yes.
All right, and we are back to a toss-up for 10 points. Identify the American king who died at age 93 in 2007. Leslie Lynch King Jr. by birth name was the only president unelected to that office or the vice presidency. Time? It was Gerald Ford. For 10 points, it's a math question. Take the number of edges on a cube and add the number of non-collinear points that determine a plane, and you will have the number of, and that's the end of round 3. We'll be back in a moment with a preliminary score. And after 3 rounds of play, the score is Mississippi Pinebelt 215, Parklane Academy 70. We'll start with round 4 and our final round. It's a toss-up for 10 points. Which word identifies all of the following? English drink made by adding water to a concentrate of crushed
Mississippi Pinebelt, Anna Rachel.
Tea.
No.
oranges or lemons, game played in a 4-walled court, and a fleshy fruit of a plant of the gourd family eaten as a vegetable.
Parklane, Walker.
Nash.
No.
It's squash. For 20 points, who is the author of O Pioneers and My Antonia, and the subject of Sharon O'Brien's biography, The Emerging Voice?
Mississippi Pinebelt, Joseph.
Voltaire.
No.
Right, time. The answer is Willa Cather. For 5 points, name the 2 elements that are liquids at ordinary room temperature.
Mississippi Pinebelt, Walker.
Bromine and mercury.
Yes.
For 15 points, what term designates a person who administers a museum?
Parklane, Walker.
Curator.
Yes.
It's a math question for 10 points. What is the determinant of the 2x2 matrix whose first row has elements 3 and 4 and whose second row has elements 7 and 9?
Mississippi Pinebelt, Walker.
-1.
Yes.
For 5 points, what is North America's rank in area among the continents?
Parklane, Josh.
4.
No. It's a tie. Mississippi Pinebelt, Anna Rachel.
3rd.
Yes.
For 15 points, Oliver Hazard Perry, the hero of the Battle of Lake Erie, contracted yellow fever while sailing along the Orinoco River in which South American country?
Mississippi Pinebelt, Joseph.
Panama.
No. Parklane, Walker.
Brazil.
No.
It's Venezuela. For 20 points, identify the 2 Bering Sea islands, 2 to 3 miles apart, that share a common name but have different ownership, the smaller belonging to the U.S. and the larger to Russia.
Parklane, Duncan.
The Diomede Islands.
Yes.
For 5 points, which word completes the proverb, "No one ever went blank," underestimating the intelligence of the American people?
Mississippi Pinebelt, Joseph.
Mad.
No. Parklane, Leanne.
Far.
No.
The answer is broke. You'll need your pencil for this 10-point toss-up. The empirical formula of an organic compound is determined to be C3H6O2. What is the molecular formula if its molecular weight is 296 grams per mole?
Mississippi Pine Belt, Joseph.
C6H12O4.
No. Parklane, Walker.
C9H18O6.
No.
It's C12H24O8. We're back to a toss-up for 10 points. Which American plant breeder and horticulturist developed the Shasta daisy, the spineless cactus, and the white blackberry, and had a potato named after him?
Mississippi Pine Belt, Joseph.
Idaho.
No. Parklane, Josh.
Carver,
No.
It was Luther Burbank. For 10 points, which word as an adjective means shining brightly, showing pleasure, or giving off rays or waves of energy?
Parklane, Walker.
Beam.
No.
And in astronomy designates the point on the celestial sphere from which a shower of meteors appears to come.
Mississippi Pine Belt, Jaden.
Radiant.
No. Say it again. Radiant? Yes, yes.
For 15 points, identify the two-word phrase from the field of chemistry that means a stern final test that proves the value, genuineness, quality, or worth of someone or something.
Parklane, Walker.
The Crucible.
No.
No answer? Okay. It's an acid test. And that concludes our match today. We'll be back in a moment with a final score. And we're back with a final score. Mississippi Pine Belt, 245. Parklane Academy, 105. Mississippi Pine Belt will advance in the competition.